Okay, welcome to the first episode of Getting Past the Past. And as I've described in other videos where I've mentioned me making this series of videos. By the way, this is the first of many series in this, first of many episodes in this series. Um, Speaking on black people getting over the racist past of America, including slavery. Okay, I wanted to start this video out with speaking on, well, the first reason why black people need to get past the history of racism in this country and slavery is history. Um, Namely, the process of documenting history, um, and how history is very, how can I say, objective. We have many different perspectives of history, many different takes on history, and based on what a lot of public schools in America taught us is history can be very one-sided. It can be very it can be manipulative, which I believe it has been, given that what I've discovered in my own walk away moment, that it has been woefully manipulative. We have been given one small view of um, events that's gone on in history, and I think it was done intentionally. And in doing so, it has shaped the perspective of a lot of Black Americans, a lot of Americans, period. Um, Particularly Black Americans, but it's shaped the perspective of Americans, period, because we only know a certain amount of history, and we were taught one certain thing about history, the history of slavery and racism, as a lot of Black activists would mention, the 400 years of oppression and slavery at the hands of white people, Europeans, in this country, and that's a bit, it's a bit misleading. And when we only get one view of history, it does something that I don't think a lot of Black people realize what it does, and it's continuing on to this day. It's just gotten really, really bad at this point in time because of the fact that what we were taught has given us this fixed idea and fixed perspective of what life was like in the history of America and across the world. And basically, my problem with history is that they didn't tell us the whole story. There was a lot that was left out. And before I really dig in and get started, I want to say I'm not going to be citing I'm not going to use any references. I'm not going to be giving any, citing any research that I've done. This is just me giving my off the cuff perspective and opinion. Reason being is because over the 18 or so years that I've been conservative and debated with people, nobody pays attention when you give them hardcore facts. You waste your time. If you're going to research something, research it. And that's why I often tell people that disagree with me. I say, hey, do your own research. I might cite some references and things that I've researched here and there, but I don't really do what I used to do and try to throw a whole bunch of facts and references to people because they don't really care. It's not going to change their mind either way. A person that really want to know and they are speaking and listening with an open mind, they're going to look up the facts for themselves. That's why I chose not to do it in this video. So, back to what I was saying. My problem with history is we weren't told everything. I know I remember for myself being in school, we were taught basically about American history with slavery, the transatlantic slave trade. We were only told one perspective of the transatlantic slave trade. And we were also told a bunch of things that were untrue about the transatlantic slave trade that I didn't realize and learn about until I became an adult and I started looking up the history myself. And basically, the things that I discovered was number one, during the time uh, in history when slavery was common across the world, across the globe, when we were taught about slavery in school, we were not taught that this was a global activity. We were taught in a way that gave the that gave the perception that this was an American act. This wasn't going on in Asia. This wasn't going on in Africa. This wasn't going on in Australia. This was going on in no other country, no other continent but America, which is untrue. At the height of slavery, and even before and after, even to today, there's still some countries that still practice slavery. But during the height of slavery, this was a global activity. Very, very normalized. It wasn't a niche thing that was only being done in America, it was a global thing. There was actually, in fact, countries that was more and heavily steeped into slavery than America was. But this is not what we were taught. Um, the other thing, what we weren't taught was um, that there were other races that were enslaved. We weren't taught that. And I think that's a vital thing because we would have a different perspective and look, different outlook on life, period, if we didn't think that we were the most marginalized people in this country and on the face of this earth. And if you're not black, yes, a lot of black people believe that we are the most marginalized people on the face of this earth and always have been. And that's not the truth. Um, what a lot of people don't realize is that every race of people, and I say every race of people on the face of this earth has had a group of their race and culture that was enslaved. Every race and culture has had their people, a portion of their culture that has been enslaved. Um, if not by their own people or tribes of their own people, it was by other races of people that enslaved other races of people. This has gone on throughout history, all across the globe. One of the other things about slavery that and the history of it, when we were taught this in school, one of the things that were one of the biggest things I believe that we were pretty much lied to. There's no other way that I can describe it because that's what it was. We were flat out lied. We were told that um, basically colonizers, Europeans, um, went to Africa and kidnapped, stole Africans, and came to the Americas, went to Europe with these black slaves that they had just stolen from Africa. Um, the thing is, and I kid you not, I'm pretty sure a lot of people that remember being taught about slavery in school remember being taught that black people were stolen, Africans were stolen and brought to back to their countries. It's not true. The transatlantic slave trade was called slave trade for a reason because it was a trade. Um, it wasn't just white Europeans, these colonists that went to trade for slaves. There was actually the region that partook and traded and obtained the most slaves during this time was not European, and it was not of European um, ancestry. It was Middle Easterners that had far more slaves than the colonists and Europeans had. This was, and they practiced this and traded. I believe, if I remember correctly, long before Europeans ever did, um, which is also something that we weren't taught in school. Matter of fact, the Middle East wasn't even mentioned in school, which also led and it gave the impression that this was just a white thing that was perpetrated and that was perpetrated and on black people. And the other fact is the Middle Easterners were a lot of people in history were saying a lot of people said that in history it was the white slave owners in America that were far more cruel to their slaves. They said, well, yeah, slavery was a worldwide, was a global thing, but it was the cruelty that was um, unique to the West and America, which also isn't true. Um, in fact, the cruelty was just as bad in the Middle East, if not worse, because the Middle East, one of the things they did that was far worse than America was they didn't allow for these African slaves that were traded, they didn't allow for them to mix culture. They were killed off, so they would not have a lineage in their country. They were not allowed to ever mix, mingle, or have any lineage in the country. They were killed off. A lot of the men were turned into eunuchs. The women were often raped and killed. Any offspring, any children, anytime many women were also um, pregnancies were terminated and killed, or both at the same time. A lot of them didn't allow any lineage in the country. That's why you don't see. It's not the same as here, where you have people with slavery ancestry here in America. That's not the case in a lot of these Middle Eastern countries where slavery was very prevalent, and it still is to this day in some areas. So, um, the idea that slavery, that the cruelty was um, somehow unique to America wasn't true. The same thing with the history of Irish people endured a lot of cruelty in slavery, and these are obviously white people, which they weren't seen as the same kind of white people. A lot of people forget about the cruelty that um, the Irish went through when it comes to slavery and oppression. It was pretty bad, but getting back to the history of it, we weren't taught a lot of these details, which I think, like I mentioned before, this shaped our perception of um, uniqueness and different, and that put a certain level of um, despair on us as black people, that I think by rejecting the history and forgetting about it, it lifts that despair off of us. And that's one of the main reasons why I think that we should do that. It's because we weren't told the whole story. And because of that, it's in our best interest to the, to not make the history our focus. And I say that because one of the things that happened, one of the things that changed when I discovered that my beliefs and the way my ideology, how it lines up more conservative and Republican than Democrat, when I discovered that, a lot changed for me. Um, and that's why I don't understand a lot of people that see me and other black Republicans and they automatically feel like we're the brainwashed ones when um, we have been where they're at. We know what they know. We were all fed the same stories. And I often say the difference is um, you haven't been on my side. You haven't seen what I see. You haven't looked up and researched and felt what I feel on this side. And I often say to these people, the difference is you are still holding on to a past and still holding on to a perspective that leads you to continue to hold a chip on your shoulder. It leads you to continue to be upset. Even when you're happy, you still have this underlying anger. You're not free to really do whatever you want. You're held back by a misconception that you're in total control of. And then I outline how I don't share that same feeling. I've never been I've never been happier at any point in my life than when I left that um, really repressive, depressing state of feeling like a victim. I never felt more conscious. I never felt more empowered when I decided to consciously leave away from that same mindset. And I think for that reason, this is why I came to the conclusion that the first reason that black people should give up on the idea, the history of slavery and racism in this country, why we need to forget it. Not completely forget, but stop making it our forefront and view in this country. It's because it's a weight that we carry with us on a day-to-day basis. And once you let go of it, once you let go of what we've been taught, what we've been shown when we were kids, and then all throughout our lives, growing up, movies, TV shows, news, media, everything, music, everything that involves black people has always had this underlying story of despair. Nobody talks about and celebrate the positive things from black history. It's more than just what happened within 400 years is more than just slavery and oppression. And there's more time beyond that 400 years that nobody talks about. And we're literally becoming slaves to the thought and idea of slavery and oppression. It is a tool used to continue to keep us in one mindset. And I think it would be beneficial for all of America, period, not just black people. Beneficial for all America, period, to really get past that chapter in our history and move forward. And I think that would be the best way for us to grow as people and embrace each other and our differences, rather than black people looking to white people to somehow repair what happened in the past that they weren't involved in and that didn't happen to us specifically. I think that's really the best way we can get past it. So for this first episode, this first series of why black people in America need to get over slavery and racism in this country, that is my that is my main that is my first reason. It's because of the inconsistent history. It's because of the watered down, limited perspective history. I know many won't agree. I know a lot of I know I'm gonna get a lot of flack from black people, and I can accept it. Like I said, I've been a conservative for maybe going on 18 years now. It's nothing new. Really isn't. I've heard all of the names. I've been called all the names. I've heard it all. It's nothing new. When you become a conservative as a black person, you learn to develop thick and tough skin. And I challenge anyone to disagree to do so respectfully in the comments, and you could give your perspective. Um, and on that note, I'm gonna draw this video to an end. Once again, this is the first video in a series of many to come, because there are other reasons besides the history that I intend to get into in the videos to come. I hope you like this video. If you did, hit the like button. If you want to see more, subscribe and hit the bell so you can be notified every time I upload a new video. And with that being said, have a good one. Peace.